So the assignment on Canvas is called Trace a Cartoon Character. So you can pick whichever cartoon character you want. However, if you're picking your own, I want you to just make sure that it's okay with me, because some are like way too simple and it would take you 10 minutes when everyone else is doing it for 2 class periods. And then some are way too complicated, and I can just advise you. I won't tell you you can't do it, but I'll just say this is going to take time out of class. I can just tell, okay, by the complexity of it, okay? I've chosen one that's kind of medium, that it'll take about the right time in class. So if you want to just use this one, go ahead and use this one. There's a download on the assignment, and you can use it. If you don't want to, if you want to use your own, that's perfectly fine. Most do their own. But just run it by me first, okay? Say, could I use this? Does this look okay? Because if it takes too long, you might get overwhelmed and not finish it. If it's too short, I'll probably have you do something else, okay? To get all the points. So what we're doing is just tracing a character. We don't have the vector image of any of these characters, most likely, unless you really dig for it. But the raster graphics are available all over the place on Google for a cartoon character. If I zoom in on it, I can tell that it's raster, right? As we talked about, as Matthew mentioned, it's pixelated pretty easily. And that's another thing. If you pick an image, it's got to be fairly big, because if you zoom in on it and it gets pixelated real quick, it's hard to see all the detail and see exactly where the lines go, right? So let me explain a couple things about this, because there are definitely some tips that you need to know. If you don't do it right, it's not going to work out, okay? There's kind of 2 parts to this. One is tracing it with the pen tool, and the other is using the live paint bucket to fill it in with color, okay? We can't, if it's this complex, like the PBS logo, it wasn't that complex. We closed off some paths and just put a fill color in there, and that worked, right? Simple shapes, basically, is what that was. This is way more complex. We cannot close every path off, okay? If we do, it's not going to look good. I'll show you examples of what I'm talking about. So we just have to put a bunch of different lines together, but not closed off. And so there will be a lot of different lines, open paths, I guess is what it's called, okay? There's either closed paths that you can fill in a color, and then there's open paths, which is just from one point to another, and then we leave it and we make a new path, and there's lots of those. And so we can't just fill these colors in. We have to use what's called the live paint tool. And so that's a whole other kind of tricky thing, but there's a video on that too. So having said that, don't just get started on, I need to tell you a couple things about this and demonstrate how to do this correctly, okay? So let me show you the difference, of course, when you get it done. It's going to look like this. Oh, is it off? What happened? There we go. Okay, look at the difference in how crisp it is, and that needs to be filled in, looks like. That's okay, I won't worry about that right now. Okay, see those solid colors? If I hide this and just show the raster graphic, the difference there, of course the color is dimmed. I'll show you why that is. But I can zoom in on this forever and it never gets pixelated, right? That's vector. So there's the difference. All right. The next thing I want to show you is let me show you how many lines this will create, okay? Not closed off paths like we're used to, not shapes. We're not doing shapes anymore for this one. Just a bunch of different lines, okay? It's like drawing. If you drew this, you wouldn't necessarily outline the outline all the way around, because there's just tons of different lines. They start and stop in certain places, okay? And that's one thing that you need to make sure you don't do, is just straight up start outlining this all the way around, okay? You're gonna have to start over if you do that. I have to tell 2 or 3 people every class that you have to start over, because if you just outline the whole thing, it just is not going to work out, okay? So this is a representation, of how many lines there are. And I don't want this, I get this too, a couple students sometimes always make a bunch of different colors. The point of this is not to make it colorful. It's just so that you can see all the different lines. Okay, see how many different lines there are? They start and stop somewhere, right? This is what we need, but they would all be black outlined, the same as the picture. Okay, so lots of different lines there. They start and stop somewhere. So let's analyze this just a bit for a second. So look at his head. Where does his head, the line on his head, where does it start? Somebody tell me where it starts. Either end, doesn't matter which end you tell me. Cooper?
Like down his ear.
Above his ear. Good. Right there. Perfect. Where does it end?
On his
Follow it.
mouth, or
Where?
the eye or the mouth.
Okay, eye or the mouth. What do you guys think? The eye? Okay, yep, it is the eye. And so, right, at the top of the eye, top of the ear, and top of the eye. So how do we know? You guys seem to see that and understand it. How do we know? Usually it's when it's one line tees into another, like this, okay? Goes into another. It doesn't have to be a perfect T. It could be on an angle. But we also have to recognize, like the eye, you'd never want to go down to the eye and then go around the eye. Why would that be bad? What's a better shape than coming down to the eye and going around the eye with the same path? And maybe that's not a very good question, but the eye, what shape is the eye? It's a circle, although it's not completed, but that's a perfect curve right here. From right here to here is like a perfectly round curve right there. We want to keep that. And so we wouldn't come down here and then keep going, and then keep going here, and then keep going here. Okay? We need to see the line from the start to the end. And usually when that tees into another line. Okay? So you got to start seeing lines. What about this hair? Starts right there. Where does it end? Right here?
No.
Where does it end? Amber? Here? Here? At the end of the line, right? You're just like, yeah, it's a complete line. Okay? But I see it all the time where you click, you go around here with the pen tool right here, and then you go this way, and then you continue on the head. Okay, we have to avoid that. And I think that's because you're like so focused on the pen tool and just getting every line, but you need to see it beforehand and say, this is a complete line from here to there. That whole hair, all right? You can cross over other lines. Okay, we're not making complete shapes. Okay?
Kind of like those, like find who will exit like the maze, where it's like a bunch of characters and then all the lines just like cross into each other.
Yeah, right.
This guy actually goes here. This guy goes here, and this guy exits.
Yeah, sometimes there is a lot of crossing of lines, and actually this right here, this collar, is kind of a tricky spot. I can't tell what lines cross and where some of them start and stop, but I mean, if you look at it really close up, you can't really tell. But then you say, well, the neck is separate from the collar, and so I would do from here to here, stop, and then this is a complete line right here. Some think it's a V right there, or it's a frame right there. Okay, so you just kind of have to look at it and analyze it a little bit before you just get going on it. Okay, this let me show you the colors again, and you'll see where the lines start and stop with these colors. Kind of have to think about it first and say, where does that line really start? Anytime you break a curve like this, if you start here on the arm, come right here, and then go down like that, you're breaking that perfect curve right there. You want that to be a perfect curve. How many points need to be on this curve, by the way, of the arm? How many? So I'm hearing 3s. That's good. That's maximum, right? How many minimum? Yeah, you need at least 2, one here and here. But that's a little bit more than a half circle, so it probably needs at least 3 on that. A little more than a half circle. Yeah.
Will we be putting in like the shadows and highlights on them?
Good question. You don't have to. That's not a requirement for this, but it looks really awesome.
How would we go about doing
Yeah, good question. How do you do it? So let me show you on this that's done. I don't know what that top one is. See, this does have them. Any ideas how to get those? The shadows. It is the live paint, but how do we, if we color that in, why is this different from this color? They're all inside the line.
It's
Any idea?
like how we were doing with like when we were doing like appearances and all that, like
Okay,
stroke.
stroke. that's one idea, but that's not it. Let me show you this. If I highlight all this, can you see those lines where they are? There's a line around every one of those shadows. Okay, it just doesn't have a stroke. And so there has to be a line separating these two, because when I color this in, it's got to be closed off, and that creates that color. And then this has to be all closed off to that color with that line. So even though, so outlines will not be around everything. In fact, I've always said in this class, don't do outlines, right? I hate the 1 point stroke. It's default. But on the cartoons, a lot of classic cartoons have that outline. Then it's okay. The artist did that. But this does not require an outline. If it had it, it would look really weird. Okay, it's just separating one color from another. Okay, and the outlines are only truly on the outside. Does that help, Taylor?
Yeah.
Thanks for the question. Good question. So you don't on Homer, you don't have to do the shadows. That's just a lot more lines to do. It looks great. It's just more work, and you don't absolutely have to. Okay, you ready to try this?
Yes.
All right. I think I've explained enough. Remember, this is going to test you quite a bit, okay, on your pen tool knowledge. And you guys are just beginners. You're doing really well. I'm impressed. But this will really test you, especially in some certain spots. Please ask for help, okay? I know all the tricks. In fact, I'll show you a couple that I've done that have taken hours and hours. I just for practice. Eventually it clicks and you just get it. I mean, really, you just improve as you do it more and more. But I can help you out in tricky spots, like small curves. Those are the hardest. Like these fingers, that becomes really hard. So there are tricky spots. Let me help you. Also, don't worry about laying the line down perfectly the first time. Go back and adjust. All right, hold down the control key to get the direct select and adjust your anchors. Try and keep curves instead of. We rarely break the curve off to create a point. If you're doing that a lot, you're probably tracing too much. You're not making You're not making enough lines. If you're breaking the handles, okay. So they should stay curves. The handles should stay together most of the time. Okay. Question. Grace, did you have a question? Lincoln? Okay. What else can I say? Real quick. Half circles. Look for half circles. Okay? They're not perfect, but try and keep as few points as you can, right? 3 points max for a half circle. If it's a little more than a half circle, you might need to go more than that, 4. But the worst problem is when there's too many points being laid down, okay? Don't worry about the color and filling it in. You'll learn the live paint later to fill in the colors. Oh, I have to show this. Sorry, real quick. If you just open the picture like we did with the PBS logo, it didn't work, right? So don't go to File, Open, and open that Homer picture or whichever one you choose. Don't go to File, Open. That's the wrong way to do it. You have to create a new document. And create a new document, I don't know, about the size that we've been doing, 1,000 by 1,000, maybe even more than that. Maybe I'd probably do this. So you can't just bring in the picture. You can't open the picture. Otherwise, you don't get the colors that you need. And it doesn't work out in the end. Okay, so go to File, New. If you haven't done that yet, do it right now. You can bring a picture into it and lines if you've already created some lines. File, New. I would go maybe this common one or even Web Large. Oh, those are my recents. So maybe on Web, Common or Web Large, I would do one of those. Probably Web Large on this one. And it depends on the size of your image, actually. And we can change that. Okay, so you'll create a document, a new document. And then let me show you this also. When you bring in the picture, to bring it in, you can drag it in or File, Place. It's kind of a strange thing to bring in an image. I'm not sure why, but we're going to place the image into our document. Okay, so File, Place, and then you can bring it in like as if you were opening it into Illustrator or bringing it in. Okay, so File, Place, you go find your, I'm just going to use the PBS logo for now because see, and now you'll see how big or small your picture is, but you can hold down Shift and drag it bigger, make sure it stays in proportion. Okay, put it down, but I would create a new layer for that. Sorry, that creates its own layer. I would create a new layer right here, the plus. Click the plus, a new layer for your lines. Okay, and let me show you why. A couple things. If you have a new layer, and this is all in the instructions. Okay, so if you want to go back and read the instructions, make sure you're doing it right. You can. In fact, I may have even specified the size, but I'm not too worried about the size. You need to create multiple layers, and then you need to lock, or you can lock this layer right here. That way you can't, when you click and drag, you can't do anything to that picture. It's just in the background. Okay? And then even better, you can dim that layer so that you can see your lines on top of it a lot easier. Okay? Because if I start laying down lines on this, which you discovered, it's kind of hard to see. If you double click on this layer, the bottom one, you can click this right here, dim images to 50%, and then it's only showing 50% of it as far as color brightness goes. And then when you put your lines on it, it'll be very obvious where your lines are. Okay, but don't forget to click on the second layer up here. And then you can put all your lines on that layer. You don't need to worry about layers after that. Okay, so don't forget to do that. I'm going to come around and check to see if you've done that, and I'm going to make you do it if you haven't. Okay, so open up a new document, place the picture, file, place, file menu, place, put the picture on the right size, size it up, keep it in proportion by holding down shift on the corner, dragging the corners, create a new layer, lock the image layer, double click that image layer, and dim it by 50%. Okay, that's kind of a lot there. If you need help doing that, let me know. If you find your own image, you need to clear it with me and just say, hey, is this one going to work? Because it might be not difficult enough, or it might be too hard.